Welcome back to Thimbleberry U. I am John Jagay. Amy Wells from Thimbleberry Financial joins me as always. Hello, Amy.
Hi, Jag.
So one of my favorite podcasts we've recorded, it's crazy that we're into our 78th now at this point, but one of my favorites was back in episode 13. It was a couple months into the pandemic, so I'll refresh your memory here. And you had mentioned seeing a change in happiness among clients, and you were equating that change with increased happiness. So let's check back in. What are you seeing now?
Gosh, Jag, that feels so long ago. And it's a really good question. And one that actually over the last few months, I've been thinking about as I've had more conversations, with clients. I think it really started to hit me towards the end of this summer that there's been a shift again.
Okay.
What I remember about that period of time is that there was definitely stress for people.
Oh, sure.
I remember feeling it. I remember conversations with clients about that. My team was stressed, right? And what also really stands out about that point in time is that the experience I had with clients, my team, and myself was a lot more happiness. Even though we were in the beginning of a pandemic, we didn't know what that was going to mean. And I think the connection that I made is that people seemed happier having less choices. If you remember, that was in the stage of it was hard to get toilet paper and a lot of products were out at the store, so you didn't have as many choices.
Right. Yep.
There was less fear of missing out. I remember that distinctly, and stories of people saying, gosh, at night, like I'd sit on the couch with my kids prior to the pandemic and feel like I should be doing something else. Was there somewhere else I needed to be? And then once the pandemic hit, it was like, well, that's the only thing I need to do. There's no more fear of missing out because there wasn't something else. And that people are enjoying the status quo.
I remember that episode, and it really struck me, and I am not trying to, make any kind of light or take this lightly, this topic, but, we think of soldiers that come back and have PTSD, and they had been in Iraq or Afghanistan or whatever, and you hear stories of soldiers in the cereal aisle in the supermarket, and they just get so overwhelmed because they're not used to having to make all these, minute decisions that we make all day, every day. It's crazy to think about.
Yeah.
And I do remember that in the beginning of 2020, it was kind of like, all right, well, you know what? What are you doing this weekend? Well, we're home on Netflix watching Tiger King, and everybody else is doing the same thing because we're all home. And there wasn't this pressure. My wife, Ellen, jokes that she's an introvert. She goes, this thing was made for me. Like, we get to stay home. This is great. And I'm more of an extrovert. And I'm like, but I miss people. And then so we compromise with some Zoom calls with our friends, stuff like that. But there wasn't this, there's this party or there's this birthday gathering or there's this wedding. There wasn't any of that. It was just a chance to sort of recenter. I was really struck by that conversation that we had a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I think that's what struck me about it. It was this back to basics mentality.
Yeah.
And the conversations were more less is more.
Yeah.
And I noticed that continue, I think, as I mentioned earlier, through the spring or summer of 2022. And it was towards the end of summer that I really started to notice a change. And of course, Jag, I haven't done any surveys or anything on this. It's all anecdotal. But I noticed after the summer of 2022, at that point, what struck me is the stress seemed to have increased further. And those comments of happiness and peace seem to have decreased.
Okay, well, in those anecdotal conversations, Amy, what contributed to that increased stress?
I think a couple things. We can't discount the market downturn that has happened in 2022.
Sure.
With many of our clients being in tech, also the slowing of the tech sector and what that meant for clients in tech. And then, of course, inflation, so costs going up. Those are some of the factors that I absolutely play a role. How much they play a role, it's hard to say. But there's also the personal side. A lot of the stress that I was hearing actually became more about feeling too busy again. Right? Life had adjusted for the pandemic, and now there's more to do. And Jag, keep in mind, here in Portland, basically until the spring of 2022, we were still in a pseudo lockdown.
Yeah.
In the Portland area. People weren't going anywhere. You went to the grocery store, you maybe got together with some friends, but you didn't do a lot outside of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so just getting back to this place of there's all of these things to do along with how life changed, and incorporating that seemed to become heavy.
Yeah.
I think there's less connection with the simpler things. I know which clients were loving puzzles and camping, just simple camping. and gardening. And all of a sudden it became bigger trips. And a lot of those things added to their stress level, needing to get ready for things that they just hadn't had to do. I've even heard, we'd love to travel again, but the idea of it just sounds so overwhelming that we're not ready. And there's stress in the idea of getting back on the horse, if you will, to that way of life, as well as doing it. I think spending more too, right? Bigger trips, bigger gatherings, more barbecues, which is more cash outflow.
Yeah.
All of that's playing a role. And then I think also it's, again, the fear of missing out coming back. And along with that becomes a little bit of a scarcity mindset, right? Because fear of missing out is really the idea that there's something better going on, which means you're going to miss it.
Yeah.
And there's not enough time to do all the things.
All of the things.
I can't triplicate myself to be in all the places and do the things. And so I think we can tie that potentially to a scarcity mindset around time and money.
Both are limited resources.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's bring it back around to your 9 to 5, so to speak, Amy, now that the pandemic has been going on this long and hopefully we're toward the end of it. But what changes have you found that it's made in your work with your clients at Thimbleberry Financial?
Since the pandemic, we became almost 100% virtual. And once our lease is up, pandemic started, hit the US hard in March of 2020, when things shut down, and our new fancy lease started in February of 2020.
Oof.
So once that's up after 5 years, we actually intend to be virtual. Most of our clients have said they want to be virtual. We have a handful that don't. So we continue to, or I've just started actually meeting with them in person again. But also our team is now spread out around the US, from the East Coast to the West Coast. And so that has been a big shift. We don't need to have everybody in Portland any longer. And I think that makes us stronger. Overall, I think we're better at being virtual than we were. And I'd also go so far as to say, as a firm and with what we do, we are better doing it virtually. And as a result, all of our new client relationships are virtual. That
is interesting because I do hear both sides of it. I've heard people that want that face-to-face contact and miss that face-to-face contact. But from what you're seeing, you've been more efficient and more successful working virtually.
I think so. I don't know how much it comes across in the podcast, but I'm a highly process-oriented individual.
I know that from working with you behind the scenes, but I think our listeners are picking up on it too.
And I think we can create a much more consistent client experience being virtual than we can if we're all sitting in an office.
That's fair. Okay.
Jag, one of the things that strikes me is, and I always share this with new clients and sometimes with existing clients, depending on where our conversations might go. One of our jobs, and very much what I think my job is to hear what clients want from their lives and help them get that. That's never going to change. That's who Thimbleberry is. It's at the core of what we do. I do think that as a result of the pandemic and some of the conversations we've got to have with our clients, I think we've become better at asking hard questions and connecting dots for our clients in different ways. So, just given the conversation with you bringing this topic up, I've seen stress in clients recently since the summer of 2022 that has increased when they were surprised by the happiness and joy they were finding earlier in the pandemic. Those are some things that bringing back those conversations, so our clients can connect the dots. It's always up to them what they want to have happen. And it's easy when you're a couple years away from it to remember that this was the space I was in when you're the one in it, right? Outside help can help with that. And so are they wanting to go back and make some of the things that were making them so happy in that time part of their future financial journey? Right? Because we don't have to do what we're doing now, right? There's the things we control, the things we influence, and the things we don't control or influence.
Right.
And so it's helping us, I think, help our clients figure out what they want to control and what they want to influence and not.
I think that's so important, and it's so easy just to think back. It's, I guess, the opposite of rose-colored glasses. You think, oh my God, the pandemic, it was so terrible in 20 and 21, but there were moments of joy, moments of simplicity, and I think you as an outside perspective can remind clients of those conversations you had 2.5 now years ago, where you say, remember this? You really liked doing that when you didn't have all these other commitments and all this FOMO. Maybe this is something you want to consider as making part of your retirement. Maybe this is something you want to do when you don't have the restraints of working a 9 to 5 every day. I really love that mindset, and it speaks to what you do at Thimbleberry, which is so much on the behavioral side, figuring out what makes your clients tick, what their motivations are. And Amy, it is so much more than here's where I'm going to invest your money. Here's where your money should go. If you don't have the why behind it and understand what your clients' goals are for retirement, for their lives, for, after they're gone even, for leaving money behind, you'll never be able to fully help them unless you understand really and get inside their head what makes them tick.
I think that's so true. And I think our clients recognize that. The way we look at planning, it's you've got a vision of what you want for the rest of your life. And we can take that and we can stick it on a puzzle. Our job is to help put the puzzle pieces together, so that picture can be as beautiful as it can be. What someone chooses doesn't matter to us. It's about helping make sure that they get what's important to them. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that means we have to explore is what you have now, what you want versus what you had at another time. How do you find balance? How do you get back to a different place if that's what you want? And then comes the money.
Right. And
how do we plug the money in?
The money is the vehicle, not the goal.
Absolutely.
We went deep on this one, Amy. If one of our listeners wants to talk to you knowing that you are taking their wants and needs and desires as the first priority, then figuring out how to get there next, and they want to come work with you or at least have a free chat with you at Thimbleberry Financial, how do they find you?
They can give us a call at 503-610-6510, or they can reach us online at thimbleberryfinancial.com.
Great stuff as always. Thanks again for your time.
Thanks, Jag.
Registered representative. Securities offered through Cambridge Investment Research, Inc., a broker-dealer, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisor representative. Cambridge Investment Research Advisors, Inc., a registered investment advisor. Cambridge and Thimbleberry Financial are not affiliated.